All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our public TravelWatch Board meeting. It's excellent. We've got all our board members with us for our meeting this morning, and it's great to see you all. We've got a busy agenda ahead of us. In a moment, we'll be running through the outstanding matters arising from our previous meeting. Then Michael and I will be giving you a quick update on what we've been up to, including an update on our business plan delivery. And then after a quick break, we've got a substantive item. We're being joined by Yonder, who've been doing some work with us on our public priorities to street space project. I will be able to say street space by the time that Yonder join. And really welcome the support of the board in that piece of work. And then we'll be taking some of our regular items, the what's going on in London, and then by exception, some highlights from our regular reports from the heads of section, and then money and risk, and then we're done. Before we get into any of that, can I just check whether there's anything that board members want to add to the agenda or to cover in other business? I'm not seeing any hands, seeing faces. Great, in which case, let's move straight on to minutes and actions. Can I just check that you're happy with the minutes as circulated?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And then let's run through the actions. So they're Annex A to the minutes. I think probably sensible, Kath, just to go through them one by one. Shall I just pick them up? So we've got the first action, which is on a joint board with Transport Focus. This is something we've been working on for a while. We do still, I think the 16th of December, it looks like a pretty firm date now. When Michael and I met the Transport Focus last week, we were still working towards it. I wouldn't say we've exactly got a detailed plan for that, but if you could continue to hold that in your diaries, that would be good. On the next one, we're suggesting we close that for now because it's BAU on staff shortages, but let's come back to that when we have our next conversation with Andy Lord, which is later in the year. Please do continue to send suggestions for external speakers. Susan, is there anything that you want to say on where we are with the process for changing acknowledgement of receipts in the casework system?
Is there acknowledgement spot?
In the action 4 on the process change that you're discussing with Transport Focus.
Yeah, no further forward. I've got a meeting, I think, next week about it.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. We'll pick up then. The health and safety one is complete. Thanks again to Eddie for prompting us on that. The next one is on co-creation on the project in building trust. Michael, is there anything that you wanted to say on that one?
Maybe I can come back to it when in my report.
Okay, excellent. And then do you want to also pick up the customer offer at large stations? We have had some conversation. Do you want to do that in your report?
There's nothing to add to the fact that we've had an initial chat with Transport Focus, but there's no further detail on that to add.
Yeah. It remains open. We had a very good conversation about that last time. We're coming back to the board. We'll be coming back to the board with a more operational proposal. When are we going to do that, Alex? Sorry, remind me. Well, let's keep the action open for now. Keep the action open. Thank you. I think the next one for Sonia. I think we've done that.
Yeah,
closed it.
Yeah, vote on both counts.
The next one, the Alex one on bus driver training, we're waiting for feedback on, so keep that one open.
Can I just?
Of course.
Later on in the report, we see that there's a wider issue with bus drivers. And I was just wondering if this action could be updated around general training for bus drivers, not just disability specific.
Yeah, there's some big messages coming through Sonia's report on that as well. Hey, Alex, what's our engagement strategy on bus driver behaviour equality more generally?
So the person who Eddie who came to the training with us, we went specifically to the EDI training, but he also leads on the wider training, so I can pick that up with him more generally. I think it was also a conversation we were having earlier today about complaints and that sort of thing. So I think, yeah, definitely forefront of our minds. I think that would do it. But yeah, we can update that action.
Yeah, I think let's I think there are the right bureaucratic responses to change the wording in the action to make sure that we're capturing our interest in bus driver interaction generally, including disability, but not just disability, and very interested in what comes through those conversations, Alex. So thank you. The next one I think is on I think if we can close as well, which is about Elizabeth Line inclusion in the digital exclusion project. The case working one, I think it's a hold that thought. We'll come back. We're not doing that today. We got some really good feedback last time. We're doing it for the next quarter, so that will be great. And then the EDI strategy. I was going to say a little bit about that in the chair's update, but we're going to come to the board on that on either September or November, or maybe both, or maybe potentially both. Maybe a little bit of early conversation in September and more detail in November. So watch this space on that one. And that's it on the actions. Unless there's any questions on any of that, let's move straight on to the next section, which is the chair's report. So I just keep talking. Right, so sometimes when I do the chair's report of the TravelWatch Board, I'm thinking, what am I going to say today? But actually, maybe it's just a function of the end of term quality of a July board meeting, but there is there's quite a lot. So bear with me. Right, I'm going to start with some internal stuff and then move on to some external stuff after that. And I'll try and race through it. The internal stuff. So I think, as some of you will know, I've been having review meetings, particularly with the most recently appointed set of board members. Now, those are private meetings with individuals, which have been about you all individually. But I thought it'd be worthwhile just feeding back to the board that there were a small number of common themes coming out of them, which I think it's helpful for the board just to kind of be aware of, and which we are reflecting on in terms of how we make our board as good as it can be.
Bless you.
Bless you. The first one was around communications, and as Sonia and I discussed, I think there was a real appetite among board members to have a bit more support from the team in knowing how and when to support key messaging from London TravelWatch. I can see that improving already. There's been some great support given to the stuff that we've been doing around the 25th anniversary. So thank you for that. But I think Sonia and I, we've been talking about how do we systematize that? How do we make sure that you know exactly what's coming and then what's expected of you? So that was something I think several of you have been asking about, and just to play that back, that we've picked that up. The second thing, and hopefully you saw that a little bit today, is there was strong support from board members for having external voices in the room. We had a good conversation with Oxera about a piece of work they've done for us. We've got Yonder coming up today. We're going to bring sort of provocation voices as well as supplier voices and user voices. I think that's a very interesting, it does bring a different energy to our conversations and allows us to hear lived experience more directly, potentially. So I think that's another thing to pick up as well. And then the final point, and this is kind of a difficult one to get right, is that there's a question around whether the terminology that boards use is whether the board has got the right balance of being in the business as opposed to on the business. So this is language I heard at kind of board effectiveness review world. So are we spending enough time talking about the organisational health of London TravelWatch, talking about the business model, the success factors, the financial strategy, as opposed to talking about the work that London TravelWatch is doing? And I think it's a really good challenge. I mean, it is a small organisation, and we don't want to be, like when I was thinking about in the business, on the business, we don't want to be all over the business. But there is definitely a question around whether we can take more time to check in with the organisation as an organisation rather than what it's doing. And I think the first step in that is the proposed discussion on the EDI strategy, which has internal elements as well as external elements. So that is something that we're very keen for the board to be part of. And Tiffany's already offered to be part of that work, which is excellent. So thank you for that. So that's just 3 things that have come out from those conversations, what I thought was worth playing back to you as a board that we'd heard and we'll be taking away and doing something with. But thank you very much for the input. Shall I pause there? Anybody got, does that all make sense? Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Then a few admin things, then a couple of external things. So Kath has just written down round asking for dates. We're trying to plan out till the end of 2026. Really great if you could respond. We're still holding, as I said, 16th of December for a joint meeting with Transport Focus. Andy Lord has now confirmed the 24th of November for our next transparency session with him. So we will do some of the same kind of preparation as we did last time. So that's an important milestone for us. In addition to the formal board sessions, I will be looking over the next 6 months or so to have a bit of a board development time as well, so we can have a slightly more effective kind of conversation. But again, watch this space for that. And then finally, on the diary front, we are in discussions with GLA potentially about an informal session with them in advance of our formal business plan session in December, which is very important, but can be a little bit dry. So we're trying to have a conversation with them, which is a bit more informal about what we're up to, what they're up to. I would love it if we could get, it's definitely not a 3-line whip, but if we can get 1 or 2 board members in the room for that, that would be fantastic. The dates that the committee is meeting are the 25th of September, 23rd of October. We don't have a date for us, but if I were in the committee secretariat, I would be organising us for one of the days the committee's meeting already. So it might be worth just having those in mind. I think when I discussed this with Eddie Baker a couple of weeks ago, she was keen to catch up with more members of the board, and this would be a good opportunity to do that. And then finally, I'm off to Find Ever on Thursday next week to visit the contact centre. I'm looking forward to that. I've not done that before. That's with Transport Focus's passenger contact group chair. On casework more generally, Transport Focus has just kicked off a discovery project on the post-rail reform caseworking world, thinking about what's going to need to change in a world of rail reform. Initially focusing mainly on the transfer of responsibilities from Transport Focus into the new Passenger Standards Authority, but potentially building to a larger conversation around what does a really good multimodal complaints and appeal function look like. So I'm really glad that a bit of resource has been found to kick off that work. It probably falls into the very, very important but not killingly urgent box. So the discovery project is due to report back Priya for the PCG meeting at the end of October. So that will give us some product to talk about there. I think that was probably too much, wasn't it? I think that was everything from me, but I'll stop talking and see whether anybody's got any questions on any of that. Excellent, thank you very much. In which case, let's go straight to Michael.
Wow, thank you. I'll try and keep up with the pace. but seriously, obviously, the opportunity for me to report on some of the things that are in the paper and a chance for members to ask questions. So I'm just going to pull out a few things. If I hover over section 2 first on the paper, which relate to the 2 business themes which have my name against them in our business plan. So, I mean, the essence of the update there is that there's been a little bit of stickiness, a little bit of kind of delay and drag in terms of our engagement with TfL on 2 of those business themes. One is around the Healthy Streets advisory group and where that is going next. And the other is around the work that we are trying to do on customer care. Just to deal with those quickly in turn. Alex and I met the new engagement officer who is in charge of the Healthy Streets Advisory Group at TfL. The group of which we are members, Alex has gone along. It hasn't met since last July. And we saw it as a kind of key opportunity for us to continue to hold TfL to account around what it's doing on the streets agenda as part of our More Seamless Journeys theme. The reason it hasn't met is that TfL have been reviewing the operation of that particular group. They were concerned around the potential for overlap and duplication with other groups in TfL. And I think they'd observed a little bit of a dropping off in terms of the engagement of some of the members of the group in previous meetings. As far as I took away from the conversation, they still want to continue with the group. But they're just trying to make sure that it adds value. We gave them some ideas. some of it pretty mundane, like length of meetings, like, can it be a genuine conversation rather than just a download of information from TfL before moving on to the next topic, which they all took on board in good spirit. Not quite clear when that group is going to regroup and meet, but I think it sounded like it might be the turn of the year before it meets again, which is a little bit disappointing, frankly. So we just need to think about what that means in terms of our engagement on the sorts of issues that this group dealt with. But we have many other channels with TfL that we can use in the meantime until the group meets again. And then on the other issue around the work on customer care, again, there have been really positive comments at very senior level between ourselves and TfL. This goes back to sort of November, around us having an input into the development of thinking at TfL around their customer care metric and the targets that they should aspire to as measured by those metrics. The key milestone that is in play here is the publication of the next Transport for London business plan, which is due December this year, which will be to look out a couple of years, and within which, depending on their internal conversations, they will kind of set their ambitions in a public way around what they're trying to achieve on customer care. Having had a meeting only yesterday with the Chief Customer and Strategy Officer at TfL, we've managed to kind of restart the process of engagement, and we're hoping to meet again in September, if not in fact in August. It might even be in August, to understand where their thinking has got to and how we can best contribute to that before decisions are made, as I said, in the run-up to their business plan publication. So just really a report back on us trying to unblock a little bit of slow progress, and some of it's been more helpful than otherwise, but overall positive. Let me just draw breath there and give people a chance to ask any questions if they have them on those things.
I think it's all very clear. Thank you very much.
So moving on, if we go to the stakeholder engagement section, which is section 3, the one to hover over is around the engagement with TfL, which not surprisingly has been a significant part of activity on my part over the last couple of months. A major kind of focus for the conversation and engagement that's involved me with TfL has been around buses, bus safety, and also bus speeds. And I think there is further work for us to do on both those fronts. On bus safety, I wrote reasonably substantive letter to actually the Transport Committee at the Assembly, summarising where my kind of observations around what TfL is doing and to what degree of success on bus safety, and made some suggestions to the committee about how they might want to take forward where I think there are still things to work on. So, for example, I think there's a big issue around the transparency of information that TfL has around the incidence of speeding by buses and the implications that has for bus safety. And I suggested to the committee that, amongst other things, might be an area that the committee should take up. There was a briefing of the committee on bus safety specifically that was held by TfL over at City Hall, where we saw some new buses that have lots of great new bits of technology that are designed to improve safety. And there was a presentation by TfL on some of the things that they are doing. And I saw that as an opportunity to pick up some of the points that I had flagged to the committee that I felt needed to be addressed. In the end, that opportunity didn't materialise, just the way that the agenda panned out. So what I propose to do is to go back to, well, it'd probably be Ellie Baker as the chair of the committee, to say, how can we pick this up again? Because it's not just an issue for us. I know that there are a number of Assembly members around the committee who are very keen to see, if you like, a more energetic response by TfL to the concerns that they have around bus safety. So I think there is stuff to do here. Really, the next move is to just see if we can kind of join forces with the committee in pushing that forward. The other dimension on buses, and then again I'll pause, is around our favourite topic of I should say bus journey times rather than bus speeds. So journey times have not been improving sufficiently, and that's a major driver of satisfaction amongst the public with bus services, and by extension, therefore, the degree to which buses are more attractive and encourage more people to use that as a form of transport rather than other less sustainable modes. We, at the end of last year, in our report around buses, had said that we were looking for a compelling narrative by this summer from TfL about what it was doing overall to improve the attraction of buses, and within that, very specifically, what it was doing to improve journey times. Recently, part of my engagement, but also with other members of the team, Alex and with Trevor, had a number of presentations from TfL, very detailed, very useful. Headline message: there are a lot of initiatives being taken forward. I think the remaining question that we have is, but what is the analysis that says that all of this activity, if successfully delivered, what impact will it have in terms of improving the outcome? And that's where, frankly, there's a gap in our understanding. And so our intention is to focus on that in particular in our next set of engagement with TfL, which is to say, you told us about all these initiatives around traffic management systems, about roadworks, around so on and so forth, but can you quantify what that means in terms of forward look and what's going to happen in terms of shorter bus journey times? And we intend to do that by engagement with TfL in the first instance. But if we feel that we're not kind of getting the information and the clarity that we seek, then we'll need to consider how we escalate this as an issue. Any questions?
I think there is a thread being pulled together here. I mean, Eddie was encouraging us when we were talking about actions to think about more holistically around the user experience on buses. Right. So and the material that Sonia has pulled together for the communications report. I mean, there is definitely what's the totality of the user experience, which is a bit separate from the are the buses running on time and what's the state of the fleet. So I think that's a really an angle for us to try and draw together some threads. And I think with any large organization, you do end up having conversations with different bits of it. So you'll talk about safety, and then you'll talk about training, and you'll talk about customer experience, and they won't all necessarily talk to each other. And maybe we can add value in stepping back and saying this is the user experience in its totality. Lara, you're going to come in.
No, just piggybacking off your point about the user experience. I think just thinking about the conversations that we were having earlier about the different transport modes that you have access to in inner versus outer London, particularly in the sort of outer parts of London where the buses are much more of an important sort of transport mode because you don't have so many other routes that you can take. I don't know whether or not, when we're talking about that trade-offs point, I was thinking about, is there a trade-off between what's that user experience for those who are in the outer parts of London compared to inner, where actually if the bus isn't running, they can just hop on the tube, or if the tube isn't running, there are other alternatives, versus in outer London where if the bus doesn't come, or the bus is delayed, or the journey is slow, actually you're kind of just standing there waiting for the next one. You don't have alternatives, and whether or not there might be an element of also prioritising. Do we want to focus more on areas where it makes a substantial difference compared to those in London?
Really
just on
building on that, yes.
So also just making sure that if there is a focus on journey times, it doesn't become sort of have perverse outcomes from it. So
right,
but
yeah.
I'm thinking of my daughter's experience of the P14 bus. So it is regularly very unreliable because they cut it short to keep so that there's simply no bus from the end of the route where she catches it. So making sure that you don't get perverse outcomes where you end up with a very irregular service as well. But I think there's also something around kind of the information that was given to bus users as well. So it is kind of more a different range of users. So people using Google as well as TfL's own website and things to try and find out when there is disruption as well. And I think it might be one thing that worth looking at is about how users experience that disruption information as well, and how usable it is for different types of users.
Yeah, so well made, both well made points, and just knitting all of those points together, we would. This actually slightly overlaps into the item that we've got around our regular item on the transport monitor. Just looking at some of the content in there, if you look at the content that TfL has published around complaints that they receive, bus complaints are as a rate of complaint per 1,000 journeys is one of the highest of all of the major modes of public transport, and it has increased, and that is saying something about the experience that people feel that they're having, and it feels like something that TfL should be addressing. And it's not, I don't think it's particularly clear to us, if there is a plan, what are they doing to try and reduce the rate of complaints? I think we know historically that a number of those complaints are around bus driver behaviour. I mean, it's a heavy element, and that that is challenging to address from an operator and a provider's point of view. But nevertheless, that a world where that is the kind of one of the highest rates of complaints, and it's getting worse, doesn't sound like a great outcome, and it's something that there should be redoubled effort to address as part of tackling that wider experience. So it was a very initial conversation this morning, just thinking about, can that be part of our next stage of engagement, that topic, as well as the kind of like totemic issue about speeds.
Yeah, and bus users may have lower expectations of the service as well traditionally, so there may be under-reporting of the problems.
Yeah.
That's a question I'm not thinking about. It's kind of, this is a scope question. Do you think it makes sense to think about safety as part of this conversation, or do you see safety as something which is separate?
No, so I think
experience going.
I think I mean that so on safety, the stats have gone the wrong way specifically, particularly with regard to fatalities arising from an incident involving a bus. And that's something that we have shone a light on through our correspondence. So I do think that that's something that we ought to, have, as well as these other strands that we've talked about, which have been some of the more traditional bits of focus in the last couple of years.
Any other this point?
And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight from the report was just right towards the end around the organisation. I flagged out something that I think I may have mentioned previously, which is that we have some outside help working on the content of our standard contracts of employment and staff handbook. There are a number of reasons why this work is overdue, and we're now cracking on with that. And the employment lawyer has generated a kind of first draft of a new handbook. This all sounds a bit prosaic, but obviously it's really important that we've got an up-to-date, concise, accessible description of our terms and conditions. And frankly, some of the stuff is well out of date. It reflects a world before pre-COVID in terms of expectations to be in the office 5 days a week, which is historic. So it needs updating for all sorts of reasons. I haven't read the first draft of 42 pages, but it's shorter than the current version, which is 60 pages. So it's moving in the right direction. I mention it because it might be the sort of thing where one or other board members might be interested in kind of having a look at the work before we formally come to the board to say, here's what the final product looks like. Can we have a view and your endorsement for it? Because we will need that before we then go out to consultation with the team as a whole. Because obviously this is something that people need to agree to, whether it changes. All the changes are intended to be benign, by the way. We're not looking to kind of reduce or make worse terms and conditions. It's really about updating and upgrading in many respects. But if any board members are interested, please let me know. You don't need to volunteer right now, but
yeah, a bit of a critical friend is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So have just a little bit of work there.
Can't be interested in that.
Okay, grand.
Great, fantastic.
That's grand, Eddie. Thank you. As I said, we need to filter it first to make sure it's at the right level of refinement before we bring it.
That's really welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
generally very out of date, or there are areas of improvement that you'd like to see this time?
Yeah, so part of it is about just tidying up the presentation of it. It's a bit clumsy. It's not quite clear. Okay, there's some stuff in the T's and C's and some stuff in the standard contracts of employment, and there's a bit of overlap, and that creates some uncertainty. So it's just good housekeeping to make that all clear. There's a little bit of updating in the light of changes in legislation since the last time, employment legislation since the last time that the contracts were kind of created as a template. But there are other issues in the light of experience over the last few years which needs to be improved. So, for example, there's a section on our grievance procedure, which actually isn't particularly clear and helpful and could be clearer for people. And that's the sort of thing that we want to improve. So it's a bit of all of those things.
It's really welcome. I'm really glad that we're doing this. Because it's just a really important success factor for the organisation that this stuff just works. So
when I arrived, January 2023, it was on the list in the drawer that said these are the things that you need to do. The delay has been partly because other things, genuinely important other things, have got in the way, like ticket office consultation, which was pretty existential for us at that time. But also, it has been quite a challenge just landing some outside resource that was able to help us. So we've been given some leads, and for one reason or another, it's taken more time than I would have liked to have kind of landed somebody to work with. But we are now at that point, and we're moving forward.
Amazingly, we've got ourselves back on schedule. Any final points on Michael's report? Anything there? In which case, let's have a quick break. If we can pause, just take a quick break in the meeting. Thanks, Kath. And then we'll come back in 10 minutes at 25 to 12. Quick check-in on the Transport in London Monitor, which is our regular digest of evidence base coming through mainly through TfL. Then let's do that now, and then we'll move on to the reporting after that. Michael, this is yours. Where to start?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm actually not going to lead to the discussion or lead witnesses, as it were. In my CEO's report, I plucked out the one thing that struck me, which is the stats around, in particular, bus complaints. But other than that, there's nothing that particularly prompted me to kind of pull out something for discussion. So it's really a chance for members to ask any questions or make comment on anything that particularly strikes them from the latest readout, as you say, predominantly, but not just from TfL's kind of recent view of events.
We've talked also separately about the customer care metric and the way in which that's evolving, which is also something that comes through here quite clearly.
You've just nudged me actually, because just on the current scores, which are referred to in the deep into the monitor paper. I'll probably come up with a page in a minute, but I think the latest public data from TfL, as captured here, shows that the customer care score has increased recently, and significantly so, as well as demonstrating an increase in the customer satisfaction scores by different modes. And the point about the customer care score, which is a score based on a survey of all Londoners, not just those who use TfL services. That was something that came up in our meeting yesterday with TfL, and they also mentioned the fact that in the last period for which they have the score results, and I don't think this is yet published, but they said the score for that period, which is about 2 periods ago, a period, by the way, is a 4-week period, had reached an all-time high for that score. And I think they said the number was it was in the mid-60s%.
66.
Something like that, exactly. So as ever, a question mark as to are they asking the right question and measuring in the right way, and as ever, a question as to what on earth might be driving that. But at face value, the story is a positive one in terms of how Londoners feel about TfL, in terms of the care that they offer to customers, and in terms of the more transactional thing, which is just satisfaction with their journey on modes. So all of that's in this report, but as I said, was something that came up yesterday in our meeting with TfL.
And this is a very rich evidence base, and everybody will take something different from it. But anybody got anything else that really struck them? Oh,
She's come around.
oh, she's right. Okay, great. Eddie.
Yeah, I've got a few, so
Oh, great. All
we'll
right.
start with the first two then.
On page two.
Right, so the first one.
That's one, is that the CCTV trials? Is it just specifically for women, or is there any consideration for other vulnerable groups as well, such as older people and disabled people, for example? That's the first one on that page. The second one is about the graffiti. Obviously, that was very well reported last month about a group of volunteers that have been cleaning graffiti, Bakerloo line. And I know it's partly politically driven, but does that mean now, with this report, I'm reading into it, that there's a sustainable programme for graffiti removal? Is that what's happening?
So, of course, this is TfL's report, and those questions are best asked of TfL, but I'll do my best to answer them. First, on the CCTV trial, I believe that is very specifically linked to addressing violence against women and on using the public transport network. So it is very specific to that group of users. With regard to tackling graffiti, I think what TfL have sought to explain in the light of the recent media comment is that they have a program already, that they, the resources that they're putting into tackling graffiti isn't something that has suddenly happened on the back of the kind of media criticism. They have also, I think, sought to say that they have some kind of operational challenges, particularly with regard to removing graffiti on the Bakerloo line, which was one of the parts of the network that particularly came under the spotlight in the recent comment. And I think the point they've made is that for some of the graffiti incidents of graffiti, which is difficult to remove, they need to wait for the tube trains to go out to be out of service in the depot. The idea that they could take trains out of service just to deal with the graffiti would impact on the service operation. So I think they try to highlight that there are some challenges involved in trying to move quicker on some of the flash points with regard to graffiti recently. But I'm just replaying what they're saying. Yeah, for sure.
It's been a very high profile issue in the last period.
Yeah.
Is there a role for us in terms of like explaining some of these issues as well? I mean, they're kind of like we're sort of in between media coverage and TfL. I don't know. It's quite difficult, I guess, to manage that.
In a world where we have many tough choices about how we use our time, I think it's TfL's business to kind of explain the situation, not our job to explain it to the public.
Not here to be fair. Tiffany.
Yeah, there's something in there about how TfL or 267 kilometers of TfL's road network has a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. And I was just wondering what percentage of the overall road network that is. And like 20 miles per hour is just safer. What is the geographic spread of those speed limits? Because there are racial and socioeconomic disparities in road traffic danger across London. So I think we should be pushing TfL to be targeted about where those limits are, not just bragging about however many kilometers have the speed limit.
Trying to answer the factual question, the TfL road network from memory accounts for about 5% of all the road network in London, the 95% being accounted for those roads which are the responsibility of the boroughs. I think that the figure with regard to London's road network overall is that I was going to say 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, but it may be limits below the national kind of limit. So there may be others where, for example, a 40-mile-an-hour has come down to 30. I think those sorts of limits apply to, I think it's something of the order of 40 or 50% of the overall London road network. Just to try and, but
Should we do a tiny bit of factual research? We can just a little bit of data on where the rollout 20-mile-an-hour has got to and what the policy is on targeting versus opportunism. I think that would be a sensible thing.
I think if you go to our website, we have there's a bit where we talk about our geographical remit, and there's a map on the road network, which I think is a TfL road network. So that will show you which are the roads to which they're referring when they talk about the road network that's got the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit.
But there's a policy question underlying the evidence question. I'm sure it's we've had it's not that we I don't think as an organization have taken a position on the kind of building of a program and how it's whether it's targeted or what kind of roads you look at first. I'm not sure it's something we can do now, but I think it's
it's certainly not what part of our work program for this year. Maybe worth considering for next year, but I don't think it's been an area that we've been active in recent years.
Anything else, Eddie? You've got more?
Next one's on page 4. Not for you either, Michael, it's just a comment
Sure.
about the consultation around the closure of Capital Call.
So, this has
Been consulted on previously, and one of the results of previous consultations was that there wasn't clarification on where the savings was going to be reinvested and how it was going to be reinvested. And it's come up as an issue with this consultation as well. I know it's only £65,000 a year, but unless it's specifically clarified how that £65,000 is going to be used to improve outcomes for disabled people, it's going to be very easily just eaten up and interrupted cost. And so I think it'd be really good to have asked specifically what that £65,000 is going to be used for each year if the service does close, because just investing it to improve awareness of assisted support services really doesn't cut it.
Again, I think we can pick that up in our regular engagement with TfL if we haven't already done it.
And the last one from me.
You can have one more.
The last one.
The last one is about the customer satisfaction around DLR specifically.
And it's related.
And it's related to lifts and escalators. A really significant issue there, obviously, and something that we raised with Andy Lord at the meeting when I came out to Southwark Tube Station this morning. There was an announcement that the lift wasn't working. If you needed to come to Southwark, you had to go back to Waterloo, do street level access, and something that's getting worse instead of better. Is that something we can pick up again specifically?
Yes.
Yes.
Alex, do you want to come back, just reflect the conversation we've been having recently about our accessibility work, which is relevant to this?
Focusing on is around lists, facilities, as well as well, both kind of real-time information, so people kind of have that information that they can adjust their journey if fortunately they have to, but also the reliability of them, as you mentioned, kind of this being out of order and all that sort of thing. It seems to be an issue, so it's definitely something that we're
And if I'm going to lie myself one, and then we're going to move on. So it's interesting. Susan might have a view on this. This is a really useful agenda item because it does allow us to identify issues that we want to take to TfL. The thing that this month struck me was the complaints data. In two respects. One is the point you just raised, Eddie, on DLR. The fact that DLR has had a 38% rise in a single quarter, which is a huge change in the number of complaints due to lifts and escalators being out of action for repair. So that's a really good example of the complaints data back backing the policy concern. And then, but the other one was around bus complaints rising as well. So a 15% rise in a quarter, which seems like quite a lot as well, due to buses being not stopping, being delayed. So there is this, again, it's painting this picture of people just not being very happy about what buses are offering them. So I think there's some quite interesting stuff in the complaints data, and it might be worth adding that to the conversation as well. Great. Anything else on this? I don't think so. Right, in which case, so we usually have one agenda item for each report, but because we've been trying to do quite a lot today, we've sort of bundled them all together. So if the heads of section, I know that there are probably one or two things each of you wants to surface in your reports. If you can just do that, that will be excellent. So I think we'll start with Susan.
Susan's not ready. I didn't think you were going to say we're going to start with Susan. So yeah, obviously take the report as well. And I did ask for a consideration. So there's a couple of things we picked up through casework, and well, the first one is the TFL's terms and conditions. So just to give you kind of a bit of history, years ago, I think it was about 2013, something like that. The London Assembly and London TravelWatch asked TFL to pull all their terms and conditions into one document, as far as they could. Obviously, there are some that can't sit in that document, but to make it easier for passengers, because they had to go to all these different documents to find terms and conditions. So that was done, but it hasn't really changed since then. It's been added to quite comprehensively, but it hasn't changed. It hasn't been updated. It hasn't been reread. And for us to critique it properly, it would be quite a large piece of work that obviously we haven't accounted for in this year's business plan. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, so the accessible travel policies, what we've picked up, and it's for TFL, but it is also for the rail industry as well, is so if you travel multimodal with TFL across London, there's more than one accessible travel policy and more than one leaflet, they call it accessible leaflet, for each mode. Now, we asked TFL, could they join all those up together? And they said no, because the ORR wants them all separate. So it's not TFL. TFL do it for the London Underground, and then whoever's the provider for the Overground and the Elizabeth Line do it for themselves. So that means that, and these documents are long as well, just have to say that. They're about, they can be 60 pages for the policy and then another 60 for the leaflet. So you can imagine the passenger has to read all of these. And then if you look at rail, if they make a multi-top journey, they have to read all these documents. So we don't think it's great. Since I wrote this, we have taken one step forward. I had a chat with Michael on Tuesday, and I've since spoken to Alex. And whilst Michael is enjoying his holiday, Alex and I will rope in Sonia as well, just not to let her get away with any of this. Speak to the ORR to see if there's anything we can do with this and a couple of other things, because they should be resolved properly with GBR, but we'd like them to be resolved a bit quicker than that, and see if there's any way of a softly approaching that. But if they say no at that point, or they can't help at that point, for us to take that forward, and again, it's another really big piece of work. So I just wanted to say that there are these things there, but for us to take them forward, something we may have to forego something else. I just wanted to make members aware, to see what they thought, and yeah.
So these are two separate tasks that we could take on.
They are.
And one of them is London specific, and one of them is kind of national, and therefore will be us and transport focused together.
Well, the first one, the London specific one, is the one that kind of reared its head with me, because if you make a very short journey, you can make a short journey on the Elizabeth Line, move on to the Overground, and then maybe the Tube, for example. And then just that short, maybe 20-minute journeys, there is 3 accessibility leaflets and 3 accessible travel policies that passengers would have to read if they had incurred a problem, or have to read to see what could be provided for them. So there is a very London element. I mean, there is a wider element with the rail industry, which I could raise with transport workers, but the immediate one is London, because you can make a very short journey. That's the issue here. A 20-minute journey could mean a lot of reading for somebody who has an accessibility need.
Michael?
So just on the London one, Susan's right. We have corroborated with the ORR that it is indeed their view that there should be separate ones. We have said, well, that's not very customer friendly, and metaphorically they've shrugged their shoulders, I think is probably the right way of describing it. But the conversation has been at a certain level. So the next move is essentially to escalate it with ORR and to say to somebody who's got some decision making power and hopefully some greater common sense, say, I think you ought to put some effort into resolving this in some way. And that's the basic proposition. But rather than just leaving them to do it, we might give them some ideas, and that's where the hard work would come in trying to say, well, this might be the way in which you go about trying to address it in a way which respects whatever regulatory requirements are. I kind of get that, okay, if you've got different operators, like a concessionaire running the Elizabeth line versus the Tube, I can understand why from a regulatory point of view they need to have kind of separate responsibilities for describe, but from a customer facing point of view, you don't need to, that's not your problem. So we just need to try and get someone a bit more senior to see some common sense.
So just before I ask the board for views on whether we should be playing in this space or not, I mean, Susan, you've been clear that if we do, there's an opportunity cost in terms of other stuff because it's a task the team is not. Are you able to say any more about what wouldn't happen if we went forward with this stuff?
No, I haven't got very closer to that, because obviously it would probably be a combined piece of work between me and Alex's team, and obviously Sonia as well. So yeah, I haven't even thought about what we could discount. Yeah.
So so I think it's a bit unfair of me to ask the board to give you a blank check here. But in principle, do people have any reflections on the problem statement and whether we should look at what we could do in this space? It's also nods. It is not, but you're not looking to nodding as you were 5 minutes ago.
Right, this
Be very oversimplified, but presumably this is all available electronically. With AI, could it not be merged into one document?
Problem we found with AI, it leaves out or it's inaccurate. So somebody would still have to check it. We couldn't just rely. I mean, I've got come up on my laptop view summary for the whole board papers, which I want to go to press in a minute to see what it comes up with, see what it leaves out. But it's that is a key issue, because we found even when we use Copilot, it's great, but it's missing certain data which could be key. I mean, a passenger could use the same product to look at it, but again, I would just be really concerned that they would be missing some key initiatives that could support their journey.
I like your thinking though. I think that's, I mean, definitely being creative about how you would use all the tools we've got to make things as easily accessible to people is definitely the right way to go.
I mean, there's potentially two levels of this. One is simply, sorry, in inverted commas, simply making sure that all of the different modal ATPs are brought together in one place, but then skimming the top of them. So that's the regulatory requirement, but there's a customer facing bit, which kind of, whether it's AI generated or otherwise, just skims across them and pulls that all together into something which is 5 pages rather than 50 pages. That's one thing. But the second activity might be to say, when you actually look at the however many ATPs there are that relate to London, traveling in London, you might see inconsistencies, and that's more about a policy change in one or other, and that's potentially a bigger exercise, a more intellectually intense exercise, but no less valid. But there might be two steps to this. One, just for whatever exists at the moment, make it more accessible in the broader sense of the word. But the second is, for whatever version you've then got, is then to say, well, can we improve on that version?
So Susan, I think what I'm picking up in the room is sort of tentative support, but interested to see a bit more what would be involved and what would the opportunity cost be, and a kind of a proposal for whether we're doing which of the two models that Michael's just described. Is this just about assimilation of information to create a front door, or is it about resolving substantive differences in the offer? So I think I'm reading the room right. I think it's probably maybe up for this, but kind of would be interested to see what it looks like when you scoped it out a bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's just I because of it, I don't own a lot of the projects here. It wouldn't be for me. It would probably be an add-on to my work, and I just think we just need to be aware that even scope of the projects is another piece of work that we haven't anticipated, or they could be objectives for 26, 27.
So all right. So does this feature as one of the things that we think is making people's lives substantively worse in how they're travelling around London right now? Is that the evidence base that we're getting through our caseworking and through other sources of evidence to us? Because if it is, then there's a case for giving it a degree of priority.
But I think we have had complaints about the terms and conditions and the fact that there is information in the wrong place, which there is, and we've also seen passenger feedback, although not actually complaints, that the ATPs and the leaflets are very long. I mean, just for one travelling on one mode, they are very long, because there's two for each mode.
So I think I'm picking up not much interest in the T's and C's, if I'm really being brutal. I think I'm picking up some interest in the ATPs, because that's because we've got that. So I think that is helpful. But I think for the ATPs, let's think a bit more about what would be involved. And without absolutely, I definitely don't want to stop other stuff happening because of a complicated scoping exercise, but have a bit of a think about what we might do.
Yeah,
excellent. Thank you very much, Susan. All right. Sorry, Lara.
Just on top of that, whether or not there are existing organisations, charities that might either be doing work in the space or that we could partner with around that. It might just be as simple as just emailing and asking questions, say, is this something that you've looked into or are looking into? And how can we kind of combine efforts as opposed to just doing something what we do ourselves?
It's a really good session. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Alex. I think your report is next. What are the kind of one or two things that you want to draw the board's attention to or ask of the board?
Yeah, I won't talk too much because I feel we've probably touched on quite a lot of it already. One thing is just I mentioned that we've been planning the accessibility work, kind of where that focuses. So I've already mentioned the sort of TfL side of things, and just as well to let you know on Network Rail, there's a little bit more scoping that's needed, but I think the focus there will be on step-free access and sort of the access for all program. The other thing which is not mentioned in here, but just for info, is that I've already seen it, there is a congestion charge consultation out at the moment. The main headline is increasing the charge, but there are also a few other bits and pieces within that. So we are responding to that, and I can share our response for info at the end of this week or start of next week.
Is it going to be contentious? Is it the sort of thing where the board would like to see it in advance, or is it? What's your level of the sensitivity around that?
So charging for road use, although the congestion charge has been around in London for many years now, but as a general issue is contentious. In terms of the proposal which is on the table, which in essence is about increasing the congestion charge, which applies in the inner London area. I think where we were probably going to focus on is making it clear how the additional money that's going to be raised is going to be recycled to benefit Londoners, because there isn't, I think, clarity about that. Rather than saying this is a bad idea, because we the London TravelWatch, well before any of us actually were here, supported the introduction of the congestion charge in London when it first came in, and it hasn't, it's not our view that we haven't changed our view about the merits of the congestion charge. So I don't think we're going to make any sort of contentious comments of that sort. It's more about the kind of nuts and bolts of what's being proposed.
So board members, okay, we just see the response to information. That sounds very reassuring.
And if it's useful context, so it is from £15 to £18, which is a fair jump, but it's also been frozen for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
The public transport modes have increased, all that sort of stuff. So I think there's also a question around looking forward, what can TfL to do to make it a bit more strategic.
I think the idea would be, I mean, the drafting has already started. The deadline is the first week in August. And if we just share with members where the next draft has got to, and it's really just a reality check from board members to make sure that, you know, what we're saying feels like it's in the right place before it finally goes in.
There's a campaign around, because it's the EVs losing their exemption, aren't they? This autumn. Is that part of the same thing, or?
I think there will still be some difference. Because they were meant to be, but they're kind of extending it. But there are also some tweaks to it. Won't be just extending the current system, some changes to it. But yes, otherwise without this it would be.
And there's a distinction for residents who have EVs as opposed to non-residents. Yeah. They're trying to strike a balance between tackling the congestion which is caused by EVs as with any other vehicle on the one hand, and on the other hand, not trying to stop progress in terms of the uptake of EVs.
Yes, there's a particular issue around vans, isn't it? I think as well.
Yeah. And vans is outside our remit.
Yeah.
That does, I think that still suggests that it's really important for board members to be cited on our response, but we don't necessarily need to play with it. So I think that's thank you. Anything else for Alex? Welcome, Shahid. We're nearly at you, so hang on in there. Thank you very much, Alex, and not just for that, but for all the other stuff that you've already talked about through the meeting. But Sonia, you won the slide of the week, slide of the month, which was the one with the word rude driver. Just exciting, actually. So, Sonia, we've been quite busy.
Yeah, so I'm going to skip straight to that one actually, just because I think that's probably the most interesting point of discussion. So this is using the feedback that we get via the website. We get roughly about 50 comments a month, so it's not like a massive.
Sorry, are we sharing your slide or?
Oh, everyone should.
Oh, in the presentation. Okay, yeah.
I can put it on the screen if that'd be helpful. But
okay. I think we're just not with the pack isn't on the screen anymore. I'm sure the pack was on the screen, but never mind. All right, that's fine. Just keep talking.
So yeah, we get around 50 a month.
Yeah.
But it's really. Like there's obviously some really, really clear issues coming out of it. And interestingly, it kind of correlates with what Michael mentioned before about TfL's complaints and how buses are. So I feel like there is some legitimacy there. Obviously, buses and very, very specifically around drivers and also reliability, so buses stopping early and dropping people off at stops and that kind of thing is really kind of cropping up a lot. I did use AI to kind of help with some of the tables that are underneath. So while they're not 100% accurate, I have kind of looked over it as well, and they're pretty bang on. But what I'll be doing at the end of July, I'll have 6 months worth of data. So at that point, I'm going to kind of dig into it a bit deeper and make sure this is as accurate as I can get it. I do have to sift out some of the spicier comments. I'd be quite sweary, so yeah, I'll be prepared for that. But yeah, I mean, I think this is quite a good overview that there's really, really clear issues coming out here. And I think once I've got the 6 months worth of data, obviously I think it's really useful from a comms point of view, but also to implement like policy and casework stuff as well. So I think across the board, it's quite useful insight. So yeah, just thought I'd share that. And at the next meeting, I'll have something a little bit more as well. So if there's any questions on that, I'm trying to move quite quickly.
That's good work.
No, just really helpful to actually see it.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's quite interesting once you kind of sift through it all and come out with this, and especially as I think it is so stark, like that little bar chart with the bus, you know, it's pretty clear. So yeah, quite useful to have. And then just very quickly, this isn't in the papers anywhere, but obviously last week was the 25th anniversary. So thank you to all of you who shared and commented, if you like the podcast. We're recording the second one next week, so that's good. I think what was really significant is that across all our channels, we were posting a lot more on social media. So, you know, 2-3 posts a day. And it really did show with our engagement metrics, they all just really shot up over that period. So I think, you know, posting more, Laura and I have discussed quite a bit, really does make a difference. So our engagement was up 65% across all our channels over that week. Video views were up 172%. So it really did make a difference. So yeah, moving forward, I'm putting together content calendar for the next few months, which we will be posting a lot more frequently on our channel. So do keep sharing as and when you see stuff. And last point, something Laura mentioned as well, is I'm going to maybe put together a one-pager for the board on how to kind of amplify messaging on socials, just some tips and handy things you can do to help. So yeah, I'll hopefully have that for you soon.
Wonderful. Really great. Thank you.
So it's a very sweet question.
It doesn't always happen, but the data that you're having, the complex data that you just fed back to us, there has been a thread all the way through the conversations. And it's not, we don't always get it quite that tidy, but we're building a picture across all the different elements of our work, which is very interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience with those of us first time podcasters. It was very good. It was very fun.
Like you said, first nerve-wracking, but once we got into it, and it was all in one take, which was kind of, we literally straight off the bat.
Amazing.
I'm not sure that's always going to happen, but
Thank you. Excellent. Shahid, welcome. Finance management accounts.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've got the report for the first quarter up until the end of June. There's nothing too exciting to report, to be honest with you. I think large in year to date, we're largely in line with forecast. Just to pick out a couple of highlights, there's a little bit of a variance on income. That was mainly due to the slight change in the pay award, which we didn't build to the original budget, so we've got a little bit more income there. That offset against an additional £6,000 on salaries as a result of that. Additionally, we've made a slight adjustment to the pensions forecast in the last month. We realised with some of the contributions were slightly different to what we'd assumed, so we've updated for that. In terms of all the other costs, the forecasts are in line with the budget. We've now got £115,000 allocated to projects. I think we're working through that quite quickly. I believe we're going to be starting work on that fairly soon on most of these projects. The other thing to mention on the reserves, we've got a forecast opening reserve of £247,000 in there. We have been working with the auditors over the last couple of weeks. That looks like we're going to have to make a further adjustment to last year to cover a holiday pay accrual of around about £10,000. So that 247 will be reducing around about 237 as the opening position. And the final point to note, which isn't reflected in these numbers yet, is just something that we've been working on over the last couple of days. Going back to staffing, it looks like there'll be a further saving in year of around about £30,000. That's due to a colleague that is taking sabbatical for a period of time over the course of the year. So taking all that into account, the net of the 30,000 and the saving and the 10,000 additional for the holiday pay accrual, our actual forecast general reserve at 31st of March next year is going to be around about 230,000.
And Michael, that's still in line with your overall strategy for the kind of the journey of the reserve.
It is.
Yeah.
That's correct. I think we have said round this table within the last one or two meetings of the board that whilst this is all in line with the kind of medium-term objective of building up the reserve to kind of an appropriate level for this organisation, we've also said that actually if there's work to be done and the way to do it is to spend a bit of money to commission some resource, then we're not slavishly going to follow the reserve medium-term goal. If we need to spend money on doing some work that's important that hasn't been budgeted for, then I think the spirit around this table is, subject to doing it well, etc., then that would take priority.
Okay, questions on the finance report? Eddie?
Yeah, I've just got a couple.
Yeah.
First one is very unusual in my experience to have recruitment and payroll combined. Is there any reason we do that at London TravelWatch? Presumably most of that is for recruitment, which we're not using. I just wondered, is it worth separating those within the lines? The second thing is just hearing about the sabbatical. It's a small team. I was wondering, do we need to bring in additional resource? Just thinking about the impact around capacity with sabbatical.
Shahid, do you want to deal with the first question first?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I guess it's just the payroll costs are so sort of small, we just bundle those up together with the recruitment, but happy to split that out if that makes sense. I guess it's just an historic thing rather than kind of any sort of real reason for it. So happy to take that feedback on board.
I think it's fair to say that recruitment is the largest element of that allocation, but I mean, off the top of my head, it's going to be about 80% of that allocation, I think.
Yeah.
With regard to the sabbatical, I imagine that relates to Fraser. Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about what the plan is there, just so Eddie is fully appraised?
One of the caseworkers who's due to come back after maternity leave, she's taken, like, sorry, an extended leave. So we had somebody in place until she came back, but because that's been extended, the person who's been covering her maternity leave has been extended as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we're covered.
But there shouldn't be a financial saving there, should there?
Do you want to explain that, Shahid?
I think we'd already assumed there'd be an overlap at the beginning of the year. We hadn't taken out the sabbatical until later on. So
Okay, good spot then.
And
yeah,
just to complete the loop, under our terms and conditions and policies, team members are entitled to ask for a sabbatical after 5 years of service. This particular team member has actually already once been on sabbatical after her first 5 years, and she is now eligible for a second sabbatical. So from that point of view, it was a straightforward decision to make, and as Susan says, we'll make sure we're covered.
This is a very clear report. Thank you, Shahid. I think the only additional reflection I had is that we've not scored any project spend at all in the first quarter. But I don't think that's atypical for organisations like ours.
It
So,
isn't,
yeah.
but the 18, which is the kind of first bit of detail within that's going to be released very shortly, because you heard the presentation that has just been paid for by that.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much, Shahid. Excellent to see you as ever. That just leaves us, thank you. One more thing to do, which is a quick look at risk. Back to you, Michael. What do you want us to do with this?
Yeah, so to update board members, the most significant change in this version of the register compared with the last time the board considered it relates to risk 8 towards the bottom of the table, which is around Assembly members' views around London TravelWatch. So the risk rating has been downgraded. The pre-mitigation risk rating has been downgraded because our perceived likelihood of the risk materialising has been downgraded, and that's on the basis of our recent interactions with the Assembly. The other things perhaps to highlight, they're really detailed more than anything else. Under risk 7, where there, as with the other ones, there are a set of mitigation actions identified. I think the latest picture, because this table would have been put together a few weeks ago, the latest picture is, I would say, rather more positive, as reflected by the colour coding. So, for example, one of the mitigations is the use of surveys of our digital community. So we have actually done that. There's one that we've done recently, which was on fare evasion, as a way of just trying to make sure that we at least had some understanding of what at least our digital community of 4,000 subscribers think about that particular issue. And the one that's red, they've got a red status around improving the representativeness of our digital community. Through Sonia's good efforts, talking with colleagues, we've started a little bit of work to try and address that. And in particular, the current focus, if I'm right, Sonia, is on trying to encourage more younger Londoners to be part of our digital community. And we're looking at reaching out, for example, to student union societies, see if they can help us with that. So I think there's a bit more progress there more recently than is suggested by those. And then the final bit, again, I'm sorry, this is a little bit of detail, but just in the interest of transparency, under risk 6, I noticed that some of the descriptors are a little bit out of date. So one of the amber ones says complete review of sorry, I can't see it because it's so small on my screen.
Review of agreed initiatives.
Smarter range for the rest of
24-25.
Well, we're beyond that.
26.
It's actually 25-26. Yeah.
I mean, that's wrapped up in the work that we talked about earlier.
Correct.
Which is coming back to the board in September.
Correct. Overall message, our sense of risks as represented by this register is pretty much as was before, slight improvement compared with where we were before.
Any questions on this? I mean, the important thing is the actions are, for me personally, the actions are very specific. We know what we're doing. So that's the kind of reassuring piece here. We probably could do at some point with having a bit more of a top-down look at our risks, but let's not try and do that. Rick.
I think it'd be quite good to keep an eye on number 7.
Yeah.
Sort of, because at the moment there's a quite a bit of sort of disinformation about London generally, and then we've seen the kind of campaigns around graffiti and fair ovation and things.
Yeah.
And the risk of how you navigate that kind of social media and media landscape is quite tricky. So it's not for anything to change on this, but just is one to keep an eye on.
And I think it's important for board members to bring your hinterlands to the table. So what are people talking to you about? So and give us kind of insight into the kind of conversations that you're having in your organisations, because I think that will just help us just sense check. You know, we're all just talking to ourselves? Because I think that's really, it is a risk. I agree. All right, lovely. Thank you very much. So nobody had any other business at the beginning. I'll just do one final sweep at the end. No. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks very much to the team for setting us up for such a powerful set of conversations today. It's been really interesting as well as really enjoyable. And our next meeting is in September. So we will see you all there. Thanks very much. And we'll close the meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.